might ask yourself, just how different is this really from mainstream Christianity? And how much of a departure is it from politics as usual in a democratic republic? The answer is a lot. So let's clarify our terms here, right? A recent study by the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty listed 5 core narrative.
This right here is about to be ridiculous. This is the Baptist Joint Committee study listing what he's about to say, 5 major points of Christian nationalism and their belief system.
The answer is a lot. So let's clarify our terms here, right? A recent study by the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty listed 5 core narrative beliefs of Christian nationalists. 1. America is a divinely appointed nation by God that is Christian.
Let me tell you for the record, America is not Israel. We're not the chosen people. We're not the chosen land. As much as we may support Israel and the chosen land, we are not the chosen people or the chosen land. Do I think we have a part to play in end-time prophecy? I most definitely do. Because we are a powerful nation, but we are not the chosen nation.
2. America's founders were in fact establishing a nation based on Christian principles with white men as the leaders.
Now, we most definitely know that America was built to have white men as leaders, Europeans as leaders. And I'm not saying that to get into any race conversations, discussions. I don't promote white hate. If you know me, you know I'm half black, half white as it is. So I'm not sitting here taking up for either side. I'm just going to tell you how it is. One thing that I always tell people as well, America was never, when it was created, it never intended for black people to be free in this country. Black people's use was slavery. There were not, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, when they wrote the Constitution, there were still slaves in the very next room, bringing food and tea and cupcakes or whatever they were eating back then. English muffins, I don't know. They were bringing these things to the people who were in the room writing the Declaration of Independence. So when they talked about freedom and men being equal and justice for all, they weren't talking about black folks. They were speaking about their own European brothers and sisters and looking and viewing as black folks as just like dogs, second-class citizens, as if they were not even included or involved in that conversation. So they were not talking about black folks when they were saying these things. But they did intend to have white men as leaders, which they still do to this day. You have a few changes here and there. They threw you Barack Obama. You know, they threw him to you to make you think that you had a chance, to make you think that he had a voice, but he still carried out the agenda of the same white leaders. I say this all the time. Barack Obama didn't really do anything for colored people. He came in and did more for homosexuals than he did for anyone. And you could debate that all you want, but the facts are just the facts. It was the same America that we lived in. You know, you had a few black people that felt they had more hope because you had a black president. It made them think that they could start telling their kids, see, you could do anything you want. You could become president. I hate to say it, but that's false. Because unless you're going to line up with the ideas of the government and do exactly what these people who established it to be, you know, ran by European folks, unless you're willing to do everything that they want you to do, you're not going to sniff the presidency. You're not going to come anywhere close to being the president of the United States. So, only thing about it is, though, they say it was, in fact, establishing a nation based on Christian principles. That is a absolute falsity and lie. But no, this is not a Christian nation. It's not based on Christian. Well, it could be based on a few Christian principles, but this is not a Christian nation. And many people try to claim and act as though it is fully based on Christian principles. And like I said, I'm going to do a whole video on that for you all, explaining that.
3. Others would be Native Americans, enslaved Africans, and immigrants would accept and cede to this narrative of America as a Christian nation and accept their leadership.
So they want anyone who is not European. If you're Indian, enslaved African, and other immigrants, you need to come in and accept everything that's being said and spoken and accept these leaders the way that you want. See, and this, now I begin to understand how there's a lot of black folks that like to say, oh, you come to America and you allow the European man to teach you Christianity. It's a false religion. It's made for the white man and this and that. Now I fully I kind of got what they were saying, but and only because I see that the different things that have taken place and the type of evil Europeans that have promoted Christianity. But I would even tell them, the evil Europeans that promoted Christianity, according to the Bible, they aren't Christians. They don't act Christian. So why would you even call them Christian? They don't act like Christians. They don't talk like Christians. The things that they do that are hateful and murderous, that's not the Christian way. But now it makes all the sense in the world. They're Christian nationalists. And Christian nationalism is what many of my black brothers and sisters see and believe is what they're trying to push on us. Because it's not good enough for you to just be a Christian. Because see, being a Christian would be loving your neighbor, loving each other, forgiving one another, helping each other, helping the poor. See, that's not what they're interested in. They're interested in you serving this country. They're not interested in you serving God. They're interested in you serving them, serving the leaders, serving the country. If you are not loyal to the leaders in the country, just like in slavery, if you're not loyal to them, then you're a bad slave. You're not to be trusted. You're a wild one. It makes sense to me now. But you have to understand there's a difference between Christian nationalism and Christianity.
4. America has a special place, not only in world history, but in biblical scripture, especially concerning the return of Christ.
See, I'm seeing from this, America wants to be Israel so bad. They really want to prop themselves up to be some holy, biblical, special nation. And they're just not. Do I believe they have something to do with end time prophecy? Yes, I do. Because America is too powerful of a nation to not have something to do with end time prophecy. But not only that, I see how we back up Israel so much. We support Israel. We back up Israel all the time, whether they're right or wrong, which is a good thing. Even though I wish Israel wouldn't do some of the things that I guess are considered wrong, that are considered hateful or retaliatory. But at the same time, they're fighting for the Holy Land over there. They're fighting for an actual land, which is the Holy Land for God's chosen people over there. But America thinks too much of itself. They think they have a special place. Not only, they most definitely have a special place in world history. But in biblical scripture, you're not Israel, bro.
5. There is no separation between church and state.
Once again, I can agree with that.
In case that sounds like an exaggeration for effect, I want you to watch this clip of an arena full.
So he's saying, just in case, because some of you may hear that, there's a lot of people who's hearing this who are on the side of the Republicans, who are on the side of this Christian nationalism, whether they know it or not, whether they understand it or not. And they may think, well, that's just too far-fetched. That's just too much going on. But take a listen to what he's saying.
Of evangelicals in Atlanta reciting the so-called Watchman Decree.
Whereas we, the church, are God's governing body on the earth, whereas we have been given legal power from heaven and now exercise our authority, whereas we are God's ambassadors and spokespeople over the earth, whereas through the power of God, we are the world influencers, whereas...
Bro, these people are out. This is like a cult, bro. When you hear them talking like this is some cult type stuff. They think that they are way more important than what they are. And they're not spreading love. They're not spreading Christianity. They're spreading a love for America. They're spreading, hey, our governing body, our governing systems are the best in the world. You need to do things the way that we do things. You need to listen to us. And they fail to realize that at the end of the day, America is all about making money, being successful, no matter the cost. There are many biblical principles that are thrown to the side in order to make money, in order to be successful. That includes strip clubs, alcoholism, gambling, all kind of different things that America condones and promotes. Half-naked women all over the TV to sell different items or whatever it may be. It could be stuff that has nothing to do with a woman whatsoever, but you have a naked woman or some type of sexual message in it. We will do whatever we have to sell things and then call ourselves Christian.
Because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated by Him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy.
Man, now that one is a doozy. So because of their covenant with God, which they never say Jesus Christ a lot of times. You know, sometimes they do, but whenever you talk about government type documents, you're never going to see Jesus Christ. Why is that? Because the founding fathers were not Christians. You're going to see that in my next video. But it says, we are equipped and delegated by Him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy. Who is that enemy? Anyone who does not agree with America. And that's not just someone coming to try to take over your land. I could see if that was the case. I could even give you that. If there were countries coming in trying to take over your country, take over your land, which even is still kind of funny because you took this land from someone else. So who's to say that your consequences aren't just coming back one day? You feel me? But even if you were trying to defend your land and your people, when I say people, I mean all citizens of the United States, not just European ones. But even if you were trying to defend this land from everyone who was here and you fought back against stuff like that, that's one thing. But you people consider enemies anyone who speaks against your beliefs. So people who speak against your racism. You considered a lot of groups like the Black Panthers. Different groups who are trying to talk about the racism in the country. And I'm not saying I agree with everything that all of these different groups were talking about. But if you had groups that were not violent, that were just speaking their ideas, ideologies. If it doesn't agree with yours, y'all kill them. FBI and CIA have been used to go and I mean, even Martin Luther King didn't agree with America. That wasn't a gang. What did you do? You knocked him off. That's what you mean when you say you will destroy every attempted advance of the enemy. Anyone who does not agree with American theologies, not Christian theologies, American theologies. There is a difference. These people put government over Christianity. And this is the prayer declaration. Scan the QR code and I guess you get the prayer declaration. I don't know what they're talking about. Scan the QR code. Scan the QR code and you can have our racist, what you call it when someone writes out a whole, that's the word I was looking for, manifesto. Scan the QR code to get our racist nationalist manifesto.
Yes, Christian nationalism is crying out for a reality check, in part because of its crushing certainty. Look, God knows, good people can disagree about religion. But as Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. And there is precious little evidence that the founders intended to establish an explicitly Christian nation. For example,
and that's something that you have to agree with even as a Christian. You have to understand. we have to live in a world and accept a world where everyone is not going to be Christian. Yes, in the days of King David in the Old Testament, yes, they can enforce through the government that if you don't live according to these rules or laws, it should be executed, punished, or judged. But being that we're living under a new covenant of love, mercy, forgiveness, you can't force it on everyone. Even if the government did have Christian rules and values, yeah, you could still imprison people and fine people for not listening to your rules or this or that, but you would still have to treat those people fairly. You would still have to love those people, still have to provide for those people, still have to look out for those people. It's like this American government, if you don't agree with certain things that they say I want you to do, they're going to label you an enemy and try to find a way to take you out, either by imprisoning you or other harmful ways, police brutality, all kinds of different things. If you're looked down upon as someone who doesn't do things in the American way, yeah, they're going to view you as an enemy.
The Constitution does not mention God, the Bible, or the Ten Commandments.
Check this out. This is going to prove my point, and I'm going to dive into this deeply in a separate video. But he's just about to repeat the fact that as much as these people try to make it out to claim as though this is a Christian country, no mentioning of Christianity or the Bible is in any of our founding documents. See, they'll say God because as long as you're talking about God, you could be talking about any God. I mean, the freedom of religion, to practice freedom of religion itself was antichrist. Because any Christian nation is not going to tell you, hey, you're free to practice whatever religion that you want to practice over here. You would already know that's an automatic no-no. So check this out what he said again about that.
Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. And there is precious little evidence that the founders intended to establish an explicitly Christian nation. For example, the Constitution does not mention God, the Bible, or the Ten Commandments. Nope. Now, yes, most founders were Christian, and many hoped that religious faith writ large would help maintain an honest, civil, self-governing society. But George Washington notably declined to take communion as president. Yep. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison were famously committed to religious liberty and the separation of church and state.
Yeah.
And even the 1797 Treaty of Tripoli, ratified by a Senate full of founders, declared, the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion.
Come on.
The United States has seen several...
Come on. So if you didn't know, now you know. This is not a Christian founded nation. It's founded on a lot of secret societal beliefs, Illuminati beliefs, agnostic beliefs. And when they say God and never single out Jesus Christ, it's because a lot of them believe that through wisdom and learning and intelligence that they could become their own gods.
Waves of religious revivals that have helped shape our culture in profound ways. But we have also seen waves of immigration that increase the diversity of religious traditions practiced here in America. And evangelical Christianity is a relatively new phenomenon that essentially stayed out of politics as an organized force until the 1970s and 1980s. All of which is to say that just as Americans can be deeply patriotic, but not narrowly nationalist, Americans can also be deeply religious without blurring their faith with partisan politics.
See, it's fine if you want to love your country. It's fine if you love some of the values of this country, but you cannot put those things over your Christianity. You have to, at some point in time, be able to call out your country when they do things that are not right, that are not righteous. But many of these so-called Christian nationalists at all points in times put their country over Christian principles and beliefs. Now, if they coincide at times, good for them, great. They'll believe both things. But if they oppose, if Christianity or the Bible opposes their country, their nationalist beliefs, or they're going with their country every time. And they're going to look for a way, look for an excuse to make it okay, to justify it. But that's not how Christianity works. We put Jesus Christ above all things. Above all things.
Now, joining me to discuss this recent rise of Christian nationalism is Amanda Tyler, the executive director of the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty and the lead organizer of Christians Against Christian Nationalism. Amanda, explain why, as a person of faith, you feel a need to warn your fellow Americans about Christian nationalism.
Well, thanks, John, for having me on and for covering this really vital topic. Christian nationalism is not Christianity. Christian nationalism is a political ideology and a cultural framework that tries to merge our identities as Americans and in Christians. And in the process, it threatens Americans' democracy. It distorts America's promise of religious freedom for all. And importantly to me and to thousands of other Christians, it distorts Christianity, sometimes beyond recognition. And that's because it takes Christianity
Many times beyond recognition. That's why people who think that they know what a Christian is supposed to be, people who think that they know who Christians are, they see some of these things that these quote unquote patriotic Christian nationalists do, and they just say something doesn't feel right about that. There's a certain hate in what they're saying and what they're doing, and I don't want any part of that. There's a certain segregation in what they're saying and they're doing, and I don't want any part of that. And it all makes sense now. It's because it is a denomination under Christianity. It's not Christianity. It's a separate branch of Christianity in which they start off with Christian values and Christian rules, but they add their own rules onto this.
the central message, which is a gospel of love, and turns it into a false idol of power. It confuses our allegiances to God and replaces it with an ultimate allegiance to country. We've seen the rise of Christian nationalism at different periods in our history, including in the 1950s around the Cold War, where we saw increasingly evidence of Christianity in government speech, such as "In God We Trust" or adding "Under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance. So this isn't the first time that we've had efforts to push privilege.
And so you have to keep in mind, she said that took place in the 1950s. Well, there were a lot of things going on around that time in which you needed to have some type of unity. And you had to start pushing a lot of propaganda to bring your people together. Why? You were just getting out of World War II and about to go into the civil rights. That was a perfect time for you to start saying, listen, we need people to have pride in America, to have pride in the founding fathers, to have pride in what we built this country on, so that we could be together and be on the same page and begin to identify who we are, and also to be able to identify those who are against us. If you don't align yourself with these values, with these rules, you have to be against us. So it only makes sense that around that time, that would be a perfect time for the government to begin this whole ideology of Christian nationalism and what it is and what it stands for and what it takes to be a Christian, what it takes to be a patriot. But above all, they said, now listen, now we don't need y'all forgiving and being too loving and kind now as Christians. We need you to put this country first. So we're going to follow a few Christian rules here and there, but first things first comes the security of this country that we stole from other people, and making sure that we can control the citizens who are in this country, especially the ones that we had to relinquish from slavery, who we really never had a plan for in our Constitution. The ones that we have to kind of treat like stepchildren that are in the house now, but we really don't want them in the house. You understand what I'm saying? It just makes too much sense.
Privileging of Christianity over other faiths. In recent years, we saw former President Trump really exploit some of this Christian nationalism ideology for political gain to get.
Yeah, Trump has ran this. Which who has ever looked? Who has ever viewed? Listen. With all due respect, who has ever looked at Trump and said, "Yeah, this is a Christian man"? Whoever did that? You never even heard someone begin to even think of uttering that out of their mouth until he became president. When you all were watching him on The Apprentice, you weren't thinking that. You were never thinking that. You just knew him as money hungry Don. Many rappers loved him, had him all in rap songs, looked up to him because of his love of money and how much he was hustling for money and things of that nature and how he came from money. No one ever looked at him and just said, man, this is a great Christian man who exudes Christian values. You never once uttered that out of your mouth. This is the same guy with the vile comments towards women, with the disrespect towards so many people while running for president, calling people out of their names, talking about people, how they look, their body features, things like this. No one ever, whoever has looked at Trump, unless you're one of these Christian nationalists, and say, yeah, man, this is a real, true Christian dude. No one. And I don't say that to just talk about him, because I'm not saying that there's not hope for him. But I mean, you have to want it, and you're not going to be able to continue in some of the ways that you're continuing in order to get salvation. You have to free yourself, allow yourself to be forgiven, and turn a new leaf to where you live a real, true life of righteousness, forgiveness, repentance. But I know for a fact, he plays a lot of these Christian people in this nation. He plays them like a fiddle. The Christian nationalists, he has them right where he wants them. He uses them to his advantage. And I always knew what was going on, but I never had a title or a name to put on it. Now it makes all the sense in the world. You're Christian nationalists. It's the same as Nazi Germany. How people had so much pride to be German for Germany. We'll do whatever we have to do to fight against the enemies of this country. Anyone who has ever played any role in this country diminishing or this country not being powerful, they have to be eliminated. It just makes too much sense. That's the name to put on it. We have a name now. It's Christian. And some of you may be sitting here thinking like, man, I always knew that. Well, forgive me, excuse me. But I came across this term today and immediately said, that's it. This is it. That's the title. That's the group of people who he's playing on.
Galvanize groups of people together who believe in this ideology, who want Christianity privileged over other religions by the government, and use that to exploit for political gain.
Coming up, you'll hear why our guest says now is the crucial moment for Americans of all faiths to stand up and condemn the rise of Christian nationalism. That's next.
Come on, let's get into that, man.
I want to read you a quote from an essay our CNN colleague John Blake wrote. The incongruity of people carrying Jesus Saves signs while joining a mob whose members are pummeling police officers leads to an
How crazy is that? And I told y'all that in my last video where we talked about the January 6th Capitol building attack. But how do you have Jesus? See, these are all Christian nationalists. That's the difference between Christian and Christian nationalist. These are the Christian nationalists. The ones who claim to know Jesus, the one who claim to know God, but would do anything to anyone if you opposed them.
Question. How can white Christian nationalists who claim to follow Jesus, the Prince of Peace, who renounced violence in the Gospels, support a violent insurrection?
How are you going to support the Prince? Does any of that you just saw look like the Prince of Peace? Just think about that for a second. How can you break the windows of the Capitol building, come through that building saying that you're looking for certain people that you want to bring harm to and say, I come in the name of the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ. Nah, bro. Nah, I don't care if Jesus flipped over a table. You can't. Yeah, he flipped over a table for a religious reason in the house of God. You're mad because you lost an election. Not the same thing.
What's your response to that?
Well, I think because they're not following Christ in that. They're following
Exactly.
power. They have totally replaced.
You heard what she said? I'm not gonna lie, she dropped some balls with that one. They're not following Christ. They're following power. They're following political figures. And in Christian nationalism, that's who you honor. You honor your political figures. You do not honor Jesus Christ. You honor your president. You honor your senators. You honor your congressmen. You honor the people who talk the talk that backs up this country. You do not follow Jesus Christ. Look, that thing says, that flag to the left says Trump Nation. Not one nation under God, but Trump Nation. That's what it, and that's what I could never understand. I said, I have never been moved to follow someone like that. To just blindly support someone like that. I don't get it. I don't understand it. How do people who call themselves Christians blindly follow behind people who do not exude Christianity? But it just makes too much sense.
Their allegiance to God with an allegiance to political power. And when we do that, then we lose our commitment to being peacemakers and we become violent. You know, I think it's really important when we talk about Christian nationalism to distinguish it from patriotism. You know, we can be faithful Christians and patriotic Americans.
I want to play you a clip of Gab CEO Andrew Torba, who's been consulting for Pennsylvania GOP gubernatorial nominee Doug Mastriano, and get your reaction.
This is a Christian nation. Christians outnumber you by a lot. And we're not going to listen to 2%. You represent 2% of the country, okay? We're not bending the knee to the 2% anymore. The 98% of the rest of us, 75% of which are Christians, self-identifying Christians, we're not taking it anymore, bud. We are taking back our culture. We're taking back our country. We're taking back our government. So,
this is not your country. Yes, your government, but this is not your country, bro. This type of rhetoric is just so disturbing to me. Because you're a Christian nationalist, not a true Christian who has any heart and concern for the people who were killed to take and then make this country. But they just speak with so much pride, but forgetfulness at the same time.
Deal with it.
Our founding framers would be spinning in their graves to hear this. This is exactly what they fought against at the time when they disestablished religion. And this is why I believe that Christian nationalism is the single biggest threat today to religious freedom for all. And those...
Now, see, I'm not concerned about the religious freedom for all because I know Christianity is the only way that you can be saved. But she is promoting the idea, which is the correct idea, that this country was not built on Christianity. It wasn't. None of the there are no documents that support this idea of these radical Christian nationalists. There's no idea that supports what they're saying. There's no documents from the founding fathers that supports that what they're doing is even the right way. You just have a certain group of people who have gotten into office and are just trying to start this new thing as some new type of wave, as some new type of religion, as some new type of sect. But nothing from the founding fathers supports this.
Us who are Christian, who have enjoyed privilege in this country, who have benefited in some ways from the ideology of Christian nationalism, we have a special responsibility to show love for our neighbor and stand up for their religious freedom rights. Right.
You sure do. Like I say, I don't agree with freedom of religion. I'm not saying I don't agree with the idea of letting people do what they want to do, because you have to. Everyone has free will, so you can't control that. But I don't agree with any religion being correct except Christianity. Just point blank, period. I do not believe that you can make it to heaven worshiping any God besides the God of Jesus Christ, the Father of Jesus Christ, of Yahshua, Yahweh. You can't. You can only make it to heaven. You can only make it to eternal life through one door. But I do, and that door is Jesus Christ, to the Father. But I do believe in having to love those who do not believe in your God. Yes, you can preach against a religion, but you have to love those people. You can speak against the spirit of the false religions that they may be following or that they may be under, but you have to love those particular people. That's what we are commissioned to do.
Now,
how do you see this all de-escalating and people of faith depolarizing and decoupling with the appeals of extremist politics?
Well, while I'm incredibly troubled by the increasingly extreme and violent rhetoric around Christian nationalism, I am heartened by the kind of response that I'm seeing in the community. Now that it is more out in the open, I see many more Americans and Christians standing up to Christian nationalism. So I think it will take a broad response from Americans from all different political and ideological points of view to stand up to this poisonous ideology of Christian nationalism.
I want to thank you so much for joining us here.
I think that that's going to increase the idea of Christian nationalism, the behavior of Christian nationalism. I believe that that's something that once they got that fire burning and that ball rolling, I think that that's something that they're going to continue to ride on, because it allows them to chase their political desires behind like the name of God. They get to act like they're so holy. They get to act like they're so righteous, but they still get to chase the things that they want politically, just behind the mask of being Christians. So I don't see that being something that's going to decrease anytime soon. And Trump has played into that whole idea of those type of things. Now, I don't know if you have people that are as polarizing as Trump to have it going so strongly, because Trump is one of a kind, bro. I mean, the way he says some of the things that he says, the way that he boldly says some of the hateful, hurtful, crazy things that he says, I don't know if you're going to have other people come behind him who are just as bold like that. And that's if even the Republicans continue to win some of these elections, you know what I'm saying? But I don't know. I just think that that's something that's here that's going to continue to rise and increase. Because like I said, I know that there's an evil spirit behind it. There's an evil, hateful spirit behind it. And I think the devil wants to cause division in this country enough to where he can cause wars in this country. So I don't believe that it's over. I believe that it's on the rise and it's going to continue to rise. But I just wanted to break that down for you all. I'm going to have some videos on how America was not built on Christianity. It's not a Christian country. I'm going to have some videos coming up on the Illuminati, how the Illuminati ties into America, how it ties into the back of your dollar bill. And what else did I research? And the American flag. We're probably going to talk about the American flag code and some of the crazy stuff that people believe in when it comes to America, but how they don't even follow these things themselves when it comes to their flag. But that's in the next few upcoming videos. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and look at some of the past videos from last week as well about some of these same topics. And until next time, one.